Hey everybody, today I'm going to talk about absolute value and how we find absolute value. So absolute value is simply a number's distance from zero. So for instance, if I have a number line, and let's just go to 2. This would be -1 and -2. If I look at -2, 0, and 2, the distance from 0 to 2 is 2, and the distance from 0 to -2 is also 2. So even though this is a -2, it has an absolute value of +2 because it's 2 away from 0. So when we write absolute value, we write it with these little up and down brackets like this. So the absolute value of +2 is, of course, 2. It's 2 from 0. The absolute value of -2 is also 2 because it's 2 away from 0. So absolute value is always positive. So if I'm looking at these expressions, if I have the absolute value of -14, well, that's the distance that -14 is from 0. So that would be 14. So it'd be +14. So I would put that over here on my number line then. If I'm looking at the absolute value of +2, that's just going to be 2 places from 0. So that would be right here. And then if I'm looking at the absolute value of the opposite of -3, well, everything inside those absolute value signs is positive, so that would just be 3. Let's look at a few more examples. Here, looking at these, again, the same thing. Absolute value of -91 would just be 91. The absolute value of 3 2/7 would be 3 2/7. Now, if I had something like this, because the negative would be on the outside of the absolute value signs, I'd take the absolute value of what's inside first. So it'd be 3 2/7, and then I'd add on this negative sign. So it would be a -3 2/7 then, would be the answer for this one, if the negative is on the outside of the absolute value symbols. Over here too, absolute value of 2 71/100, -2 71/100 rather, would just be 2 71/100. And the absolute value of 72 would just be 72. Now, when we're looking at images like this, we're going to look at this one. How many floors does the building have total? Well, my 0 in this picture would be my ground level here. So that's 0. And I would number my number line going up all the way to the roof here, which would be not -7, but just 7. Just trying to draw a line there. So 7. And then going down, I would have negative numbers all the way to the bottom. So now if I had to find how many floors the building had, I would just use absolute value. So the absolute value of my positive numbers goes to 7. So I'd have the absolute value of 7. And then the absolute value of my negative numbers is -5. So now I have to find the absolute value of this total. So I would have the absolute value of 7 plus the absolute value of -5. So that would be 7 plus 5, which is 12. And so that's how you find absolute value.